What's up, guys? That Really Gross Guy here. We are back, and today I want to talk to you guys about Soulframe. And some of you probably are already aware that there is some controversy going on around Soulframe right now, and some opinions based on the trailers and whatnot that might give you some mixed thoughts on whether the game is number one going to be good, and number two was even worth showing at the TennoCon 2024. Now, keep in mind, they did show a previous gameplay trailer last year, and I think that there are some definitely issues that need to be worked out, as well as some, high points, some good things that I think the game is doing. And what I want to do is, from my personal point of view and opinion, I want to kind of take a look at what we've seen thus far. Now, I want to be fully transparent. I am uh, a big fan of digital extremes. I have been playing Warframe for a very, very long time, and I do believe I'm allowed to say this, but I've been playing the Soulframe Preludes for a little while now. Now, I haven't dove into the every corner of the game world and the character building, all that stuff. I obviously will only talk about what I think I am allowed to talk about. I'm under the impression that when the attendees for TennoCon got their ability to play Soulframe's Preludes, because everybody that was in physical attendance did get an email saying you could join the game. This is public knowledge. They showed it on the actual TennoLive. But I do want to say that from my personal experience, like I said, I do have some concerns, but I also I see some promise in the game, and with my previous experience with Digital Extremes and their history, I do think this game will one day be very good, and I think this is something to look forward to. I just want them to take their time and make sure that they do it properly and they don't jump the gun, because this game, like I said, has a lot of potential, and I think one day will be great. So let's jump on in, and I will have some gameplay and whatnot going on in the background. I will only be showing what I is from the trailers, but at the same time, I might sneak in little clips or snippets of some of the stuff I am talking about while I am talking about them to give a little bit of a visual, and we're gonna go from there. All right, so I do want to say first and foremost, visually, this game looks very, very good. Everything from the cinematic trailer that we have seen in the recent dev stream, as well as some of the gameplay section from the first trailer, which I say gameplay, which there were some story-driven cinematics and stuff in there as well. Visually looks awesome. It is a really cool fantasy environment and very medieval fantasy. There is, a lot of nature involved. A lot of the concept art and stuff is beautiful regarding the world that the Digital Extremes is crafting for Soulframe. There are some unique little I don't want to call them Easter eggs, but unique things like for instance, you see here when you log into the game itself, you have little wild animals that are joining you alongside you. Um, they actually, based on sequential logins, there are more and more of them. So if you log in for 3 consecutive days, from what I understand, there will be three different animals sitting by your side. I don't know what that's going to look like when you've consecutively logged in for months or years. It's going to be some insane herd, zoo going on there. But anyways, um, there is this crazy, uh, almost limbo, purgatory feel to the game, which I think I've heard the developers uh, actually say out loud the idea of like this purgatory, the ancestors in the game, as though there is some um, I don't know, some trapped in limbo kind of feels when it comes to the world and whatnot. I will say the hub that we kind of live in with our little wolf pal, and our blacksmith, and where our lore is, and where we actually set up our loadouts is really unique. I find this area very, very fascinating. I don't want to call it ethereal because, like I said, it's almost like a limbo state, but it's your own like corner of limbo, I guess. I don't know. I find it really fascinating. From what I've seen when it comes to the gear, I think it's really intricate. Some of the swords, the armors, are just very detailed. They have a lot of thought behind them. Um, some of them you can definitely see where they get their inspiration from, but it's got its own unique twist. And I absolutely love that. And the ability to travel back and forth with just the press of a button, I think is really cool. And all right, now you will see in the background here, I will get into one of the controversial parts of the game itself, and that is going to be some of the combat. And I'm showing right now the YouTube video behind, and we're gonna see a animation for a finisher move that technically the animation misses. And this is number one, the biggest problem with doing a live demo. Now, I do want to point this out because a lot of people are not aware that this was a live demo. There was no editing, there was no hiding the little faults and details of this game whatsoever because they were doing it live. You can see here the unfortunate part of doing so is to show everybody that watches this trailer that has a keen eye that you failed to fulfill an animation finisher, even though technically the action does occur and the finisher does just in game do what it was expected to do. The animation actually failed, and that sucks for the world to see, especially for a game that you're trying to put out there and get people, interested in and excited about. Now, keep in mind, this is not in beta. This is alpha. This is pre-public release. This is very important to understand. And yes, I understand why would you show this to the public if it wasn't ready. These are the little quirks of showing a game in progress that is very, very far from release, and even a ways off of public access. This is part of those growing pains, and unfortunately, this occurred. But keep in mind, every single developer that does not do live gameplay for the public to see is tweaking and editing all of the faults and garbage out of their content before they show it to the public. Every trailer that goes to E3, well, E3 anyways, rest in peace, that goes to all of these big conventions is heavily edited and gone over frame by frame to make sure there are no faults that the public can pick out. Now, I'm going to just resume this footage for a little bit, and we'll talk a little bit more about the combat. But keep in mind, and like I said, I'm not necessarily defending them. It might sound like I am, because the combat does genuinely need a lot of work. It leaves a lot to be desired. While there are good aspects of the combat, no doubt, there is a lot of room for improvement. And I mean a lot of room for improvement. Like I said, this is also coming from somebody who has been playing Soulframe behind the scenes. Now, I can't, as far as I know, I can't publicly show any of the preludes at this point. I can only show what Digital Extremes has shown. Maybe that's recently changed now that they've just added a whole bunch of people to the preludes, but I'm not going to take that risk. So I will kind of show and talk about some of the combat and improvements, as you can see in the background. Um, what I personally have been running into problems with is it feels, and I know it's meant to feel slow. It's not meant to be Warframe's combat speed by any means, but it does feel very early. One problem that I think they're running into is people that are not aware of the developers and what their intentions are for this game are seeing the name Soulframe, and they are assuming this is supposed to be another Soulsborne game. They're under the impression that this is supposed to be brutal dodge boss mechanics, parry system, levels of difficulty like all the Soulsborne games, and that is absolutely not the case. They straight up said this at TennoLive.
We know what we did by calling it Soulframe.
We were going to call it.
We know what we did.
We're going to call it Elden Frame, but I thought that'd be confusing. No. So Soulframe's more clear, isn't it?
I think our number 2 name was Fantasy Frame. No, we can't do that. So Scott, is this a Souls game?
No, it's not. I would say it's like a more casual approach to a Souls game. It still has the deep mechanics and the deep mastery of the combat, but it's easier to pick up and less punishing.
So it's made for like me, basically, because I cannot get past the Godskin duel right now. I got to build some sleep pots. Yeah, okay.
For everyone that was there to see, unfortunately, they didn't really say it during the gameplay, so anyone that's just seeing the gameplay is completely unaware of this fact without the prior knowledge. And they've said this multiple times, but I do want to say, because this was the biggest showcase of the game thus far, there's a lot of people that are not aware that this is meant to be I want to call it hack and slash, but it's not like a Devil May Cry. It's not a Dynasty Warriors. It's not a God of War. It is meant to be a slow and methodical Souls inspired combat, just a combat system. You can see, obviously, there is some shield, sword and shield usage. There is some dodging mechanics. Well, sort of. There is a parry system. There's a finisher system. And people see that and they assume this is supposed to be faster. This is supposed to be more aggressive, more dangerous. This is supposed to be 1 hit, 2 hits, finish, just done. Get good, scrub kind of gameplay, and it's not. I do believe this game is going to weigh more and more heavily into, it's definitely going to play into combat mechanics and just get good, but it's also, I think, going to play a lot of stats and upgrading weapons, and I mean that's in all the Soulsborne games as well. But I think this is, like I said, it's going to be about your build. It's going to be about your slow and methodical game mechanic and skill, I guess. I don't know. It sounds very Souls-like, but except Souls-like is way, way, way faster and way, way more punishing. I do want to put out there that this game feels like, so if you, in Warframe, there is a portion of the game where you enter a world called Duviri. And this feels like a slightly upgraded Duviri melee combat. And for those of you who have played Warframe and played through Duviri, you know what I'm getting at. Duviri's melee combat leaves a lot to be desired. It is not very complex. It is the very introduction of, I guess, melee, slow, methodical combat in Warframe, and it's vastly different from the rest of Warframe. Now, people may not realize this as well, especially if they haven't played Warframe, and especially Duviri, is Digital Extremes likes to introduce a new mechanic through events and quests and things like that, and they like to just dip their toes in it, try something new, and then elaborate on it more in the future. And Duviri is quite literally the pre-alpha's alpha version of Soulframe. It is their first dabble in doing this type of combat before Soulframe even was in production, like full production. Duviri, as you saw in the background, is melee inspired. Enemies are built in pods of a couple lights and a heavy unit. You see that a ton in Soulframe. There's going to be picking out enemies and seeing who's the threat and who to take advantage of or who to take down first. There's going to be some ranged enemies with bows. There's going to be ranged enemies with magic. And that was all in Duviri as well. It's just Duviri is probably one step behind what Soulframe is currently offering. And I wholeheartedly believe, without a shadow of a doubt, that Soulframe plans on basically revamping and updating and building on this combat system before this goes public. I hope. I truly hope, because like I said, it leaves a lot to be desired. Now, granted, when it goes public technically in the fall, if they're still going to hold to that, this is still going to be early access. I don't think most people realize that Soulframe Preludes is not Soulframe. It's a slice of the Soulframe cake. You're only going to probably be able to participate in a small section of the Soulframe world. Now, part of that is because the world is just not ready. They have a sliver of it ready for players to just explore and play around with. And two is because this game is a live service, and just like Warframe, it's going to be reiterated on for many, many years to come, hopefully. One of the biggest flaws I've been having with Soulframe in general is the dodging mechanics and the ability to just not take damage. Now, you can use your shield or block if you utilize weapons that can do so. Some are better than others, but the idea is there is shielding there is parrying, there is, you know, using your weapon to just block in general, and then there's just dodging. And when I say dodging, there are a couple rolls in the game, and there are a couple side steps and such that you can see, you know, in the gameplay behind me. It is, I don't want to say it's not responsive. I just feel like it is, because the game is slow. It's, I want to call it sluggish. And because this doesn't play on Soulsborne games where there are rolling iframes, you know, all sorts of different angles, all sorts of different rolls, heavy rolls, light rolls, you know, just medium rolls. There's my brain just went into bakery mode where cinnamon rolls. Anyways, because the rolling mechanics are lackluster, and a lot of your dodging is, let me just jump back into that little combat. A lot of that, a lot of those dodges are really ugly, hideous, just jumps where the enemy might do a stomp or a ground slam, and you do this just straight up jump in the air. You will see it here in the background. It's like early. It's very early melee combat type of combat or dodge mechanics. I hope they resolve their dodging. You can see some good dodge mechanics in there. It's slidey, which is strange for a game that's so slow and sluggish. I think that was probably the best example of the dodge mechanics. I think the bad example of the dodge mechanics was in this first boss fight up here. I mean, the bow thing is pretty sick. You have to admit, the flying up in the air and pulling the bow out and doing see the dodge mechanics. The zooming in is just, I think it's trying to be really cinematic in the combat, and it's killing the actual combat experience, in my opinion. The zooming might not be a feature. It might be behind the scenes work that during the live whatnot where they're trying to mess with the field of view and zoom in there. Not being able to see incoming attacks is a problem. Just throwing that out there. Everybody knows that. If you can't see the attacks that are coming your way, and you can't dodge them, it's going to be a bad experience. That needs to go. Maybe there can be like a toggle zoom if you want to, do it yourself, but it seems too complicated, too complex, and not worth even probably the programming and whatnot to kind of make that a thing. I don't know. Let me know what you think about that. But now I do want to make sure I show off, some of the lighter unit kind of combat going on here. This is from the very first trailer. There's a little bit of co-op going on here, but I do want to make sure that I show some of this off with you guys as well. There were some light units there. There is, I want to call it a heavy unit here. Oh, there was. And obviously there are larger enemies in the world like Nimrod that we saw earlier. and some of the bosses that are in the game. But in terms of the theming and kind of the way the skills are lore wise or like fantasy fictionally in the world, I think is really cool. I've really been enjoying, which you guys have seen in the last or the most recent trailer, using the bow. It's like an exalted bow is really satisfying. The bow, oh man, it is just. I don't want to say there's nothing they should change because I think there's always room for improvement, especially in this game in particular. But the bow stuff was satisfying. It was fun. A little bit more light unit combat going on in the back. The parrying is the parrying needs improvement. It's not awful, but it's unconventional a little bit. There are games that do it better, and there are games that do it worse. But I do want to see some improvement to the parry system. I don't know if I necessarily want a parry button where your guard is up, but then you need to toggle another button to actually do a a knock, kind of like we see in some of the Soulsborne games, where you hold the shield up, but then you toggle another button to do the parry. Some games, you actually don't have your block up at all, and then just before the melee lands, you hit the block. And that's, from what I can tell, the way Soulframe works. And honestly, I don't like that either. If I had to pick one or the other, I would probably rather keep my guard up and use another button to initiate a parry, because at least then I still have my guard up for that amount of time. Maybe I'm surrounded by 3 enemies and I want to keep my guard up, but I want to be prepared for a parry. So if the first guy catches me off guard, well, I say catches me off guard, but if the first guy comes to attack me and I'm not expecting it, at least my guard is already up. So that's why I prefer that system over the other. It would be pretty cool to almost just allow for, which you kind of see in the games like Assassin's Creed, where you kind of have a parry block mechanic where it's somewhat seamless, but it's a constant. If you don't understand what I mean, it's more that you're always guarding and always parrying seamlessly without having to juggle buttons. Now, some people might think that's too simple, but like I said, this isn't supposed to be a Soulsborne, you know, button, button juggling. I don't know, deal here. I'm not solving a Rubik's cube on my controller. I'm just, trying to casually put some combat and progress. Let me know what you think about that though. What's your favorite blocking mechanic, and what do you think should be implemented for a game like this? Now I'm gonna briefly show some of the more exciting aspects of the game, which to me is the story and lore, the fantasy world, the bosses. You can see here we're basically introduced into a boss encounter with this woman here with this almost mace-like staff deal. Manipulating and taking control over Lady Diora, taking over this stag. She's an ancestor. She's been manipulated, and she has, ill intention because of her misguidedness, we'll just say. There's going to be a lot more to discover about, the manipulation and the what do you call it? The influence on this world as we play the game. But yeah, I don't know. I'm excited to see a lot of that stuff unfold as the game comes out. But and then we of course fight the infected stag, and I'll let you guys, if you haven't seen it, kind of experience that. And watch the trailer or experience it on your own, playing the game, especially when the Preludes and stuff comes out, or if you're already in Preludes from, being lucky on the email and getting your Envoy title set up really, really quickly and early, or if you were at TennoCon. I didn't want to go too far without kind of showing a purified kind of deal. The atmosphere completely changes. There's a lot of beauty to behold in the stag itself, the fur, the world, just the atmosphere. It's very autumn, fall colors in this area now. It's so gorgeous. When it gets kind of purified and whatnot, super super cool. I also am a huge fan. Obviously, we see some more of the world here, but I'm just an absolute huge fan of our potential interaction with some of the animals and beasts and all that stuff. And of course, with our freaking awesome wolf friend we have here, um, literally just tosses that dude aside like it's nothing. And being able to mount and ride our little wolf companion, our gigantic wolf companion is so cool. I love the fantasy Mononoke, just inspiration here. Just, I'm all about it. I'm so excited to see where this game will go in the future. People found this little creature here, which gives you a quest regarding the game. Avocot. He is unlike anything I've ever seen in fantasy, personally. Maybe he's inspired by something somewhere, and it's their own version of it. But I find this little creature endearing. He sneezes and whatnot. The world building and stuff, I think, is going to be incredibly unique to not just video games, but like I don't know, media in general. Like I said, I haven't seen this in movies. I haven't seen this in games. I haven't, I don't do comics or any of that, stuff. But I don't know. Does this look like anything, familiar to anybody out there? I mean, other than a turtle? I don't know. It's like a turtle crab creature. I don't know. It's super cool. Forest turtle crab creature. Of course, as the game progresses, there's going to be different ancestors that we get introduced to, which are going to, from what I can tell, allow us to get into different skills. Our arm changes, I guess, depending on who we're currently ancestral ties are linked to or whatever. You can see the blue arm that our character is currently having behind us. And in that very first trailer, we had that very big metallic, almost medieval arm. Almost, I would say almost steampunkish, almost, I don't know. It had a little key thing on it. They all technically, I think all of them do. Well, at least the ones that I think we've been introduced to thus far, is tied to our ancestors. There's all sorts of different weapons from, kind of different feels, heavy weapons, pike, halberds, spears, 2 swords, 2 short swords, or 2 like axes, sword and shield, of course, long sword, like broadsword, I think. So all of that you would expect from a medieval game is there. I do want to say I think this revival mechanic is pretty cool, where you when you go down, you become a bird at the local like save spot, a little bonfire, whatever you want to call it, checkpoint, and you fly to the place where you were downed, and you basically revive there. And if you're in combat, then you typically will have to resume combat. This was a special exception where the boss tends to flee from time to time. But I think that mechanic's really cool. It's also your little guide towards your quests, I think is pretty neat. And of course, the more that things, unravel and unfold, we're seeing these nightmarish creatures. The stag is pretty, eerie. This final reveal of this, like, three-headed Cerberus bear monster is really intimidating, very morbid. But just the world that's unfolding is so. I'm so hyped for it. I'm so excited for it. The one thing that I think this game has going for it above anything else is the fantasy world itself. I'm kind of leaving it on this screen here for anyone that wants to, check in and maybe reserve your envoy name. Follow some of the socials or whatever for Soulframe. This game, by far, has an incredible amount of potential. The developers behind this game have a whole lot of heart and drive to make sure that this game is, number one, unique, stands out from anything else. Warframe is like no other game out there. It definitely is inspired by a lot of games, but it is truly unique to what it is itself. This game, for sure, is going to be truly unique to the fantasy genre in what it is and has to offer people. It has, story-wise, so much potential, and what really needs to be nailed down is the gameplay experience. And combat needs a dramatic improvement. I don't know if they need to get more people into the mocap room and capture and evolve and create their animations. I don't know if they need to go and find some expensive but qualified people out there to jump in mocap suits and get some, some I don't know, combat, animations and stuff done. I do think they have every intention of, like I said, improving combat. I just hope they do it before everybody gets their hands on this game, because it's very easy to jump the gun and turn away a lot of potential players because you are excited to get people's hands on your product, but at the same time, for the long-term life of this game, I think they really need to focus on getting their combat down. And I don't want to say polish, because of course this is, like I said, early access. But I truly think that if they get this in a very enjoyable state, this game will take off just as much as Warframe does. Now, I would love to know what you guys think. Sorry this video is probably super long, but I really wanted to get my opinion out there because I really am excited for this game. However, I do think it is not beyond criticism. It needs some more work. But I also think that work will pay off exponentially for this game's future. I do want to thank you guys for watching this video. Let me know any thoughts you have on this game. I am all ears because I, of course, want to invest my time in this game. I want to produce content for this game, and I would love to communicate like I have in the past with Warframe. I want to be able to communicate with Digital Extremes on what the public, what the community, of course they see a lot of that, of course, but what the community really feels and what can kind of inspire them, number one, to keep pushing and improving this game, but number two, to not lose track of maybe what is the most desirable aspect and of this game. And I think a lot of that is going to be the story, but not at the detriment of its combat. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I would love to see you guys again in a future video. Hello.